You don't need more motivation. You need to face the part of you that's quietly ruining everything. What I thought was my superpower was just that, my saboteur. And I remember the first thing that hurt my heart, that made me think that I got a real problem, was the fact that I said, if this continues, I'm not gonna have a relationship with him. I was gonna lose his heart. Essentially, what I thought was my superpower was just that, my saboteur. So, where does it begin, right? It begins for most of us. We had some kind of struggle when we were younger. We didn't get seen, didn't feel safe. And for me, it was no different. I had two hardcore blue collar parents from Detroit who went to instill me into a certain way that they knew. And what I found as I got older was that I just wasn't like the rest of the people around me. And so while they're trying to shove this square peg into a round hole and I'm not fitting, kind of like trying to get a fish to climb a tree and then you call it stupid because it can't. When that happens over enough times, something gets created in you, and in me for sure, and it was a fire. That fire for a while allowed me to fight as an underdog, overcome adversity, develop some grit early. So as a kid, I got called an instigator a lot by my mom and dad. They would just call me an instigator. I take this instigator word probably in my mid-30s, and I'm like, what does that really mean? I look up in the dictionary, it says someone or something that makes something happen. I'm like, dude, I'm a mover and a shaker, right? I make stuff happen. I end up going all in on the instigator idea. I even had a hat made, and I wore this thing. I was doing videos in 2016 about this, and I still had a lot of damage going on, especially from war, post-traumatic stress. And this was what I thought I was as I was healing. And it turned out, as my friend and writing coach Bridget says, she calls it a false victory, because it was still born out of lack, and it's not based in love and in wholeness. But it did help me for a time, because that's what the beast does. And I know that the instigator, being a few years past that, is, I realized over the last year, where I thought, again, it was my superpower, it was actually my super beast, my dominant. There's no doubt about it. I don't have an archetype built around that, but if you wanna know your dominant, go to beasttype.com. Take the 10-question quiz. It's free. We can grow and expand beyond these things and master our beasts instead of being mastered by them. And at that point, we're really living in the spirit over the flesh. And in the next segment, you're gonna hear some conversational pieces. And one of those is coming from my wife, Nikki. And we're gonna have a little conversation about how she saw that very thing raising our sons. You're gonna see how I was able to eliminate yelling. 0 to 10, Grayson would do something when he was smaller, and I'd get, wow, whoa, excited, yelling. Have you seen that this year? No. All right. The yelling takes care of itself when the heart gets healed. One of the things that I do in my coaching of the 7 pillars of revolutionary freedom is teach people the power of neglecting things. If you neglect your houseplants, they gonna die. If you neglect the stuff that you don't like, the unwanted patterns, they die. But they must be replaced, and that's a big part of this. I hope you glean the blessing in the next segment. Let's go now. We're continuing this conversation that we began with talking about the saboteur inside, right? How much did you see what I did as a direct relation to my own upbringing?
I don't think I saw anything that you did based on necessarily your upbringing that way. I think it was more so in a reaction to your upbringing. So after we moved here and you dealt with Grayson, that's really when your instigator came out, because it was a constant mode of defense. So even with him doing what he was doing, it was more of like an irritation and a reaction. And why can't you just, and why can't you not?
I know for me personally, what allowed me to see it was how I reacted to Grayson as a baby. That was the beginning of me seeing it, because he drew up something in me that I couldn't control. He's born 30 hours after I get back from Afghanistan, and we grew up like his infancy and my thing, it happened simultaneously.
Yeah.
And he's different. He's so different than the other three. And I remember the first thing that hurt my heart, that made me think that I got a real problem, was the fact that I said, if this continues, I'm not gonna have a relationship with him. I was gonna lose his heart. That was why I wanted to seek what I could do.
Well, he was a reflection of you.
Right, a
In
mirror,
his
right?
upbringing. He responded with whatever energy was being brought at him. And then you respond to him in the same way, or yelling or anything else. It's like he just tried to match your intensity, if not
Yep.
go above it. With him, it wasn't to where if you met him with calm and stillness and
Right. And
love,
and relaxed touch.
yeah, that it would necessarily spoil him, or he wouldn't be in trouble, or he's acting different. But you really needed to do that to draw him back down so he could feel it and he would be able to feel safe. A lot of it was him not feeling safe.
What stops parents from confronting that thing? Why did I confront it? I confronted it because I refused to lose his heart. That's where it all starts for me, with Grayson in particular. He's our fourth and last.
But I think a lot of parents, it's not necessarily if they can see it or confront it. I think that there's only one way to parent and discipline. A lot of people think that, which is the way that they were
A
raised.
right and
So
wrong way.
yeah, so when we would run into something like that with Grayson, as we did, a lot of parents would just be like, okay, well then they need therapy. Like we need to take them to talk to
Oh,
someone because
right.
it's them, it's not us.
Yeah.
But it's just adjusting the way that you interact,
Yeah.
and it's not necessarily a them problem. It's a we
Right.
or a you, because you're the adult. It's ultimately our responsibility to navigate their heart and their emotional well-being.
What do you have to encourage somebody with using tools, getting books, listening to podcasts, these things that most people would never be humble enough, if we're going to be frank about it, or even aware, to be fair, aware enough to know, like, it's a skill thing?
Well, because when you look at like nutrition, let's say, or weight loss or whatever else, and coming from the holistic side, it's more so treating the individual person, because no one person is biologically the same. So the foods we eat, my cells and DNA respond to differently than you eating the same food. So they do different things for our bodies in ways. So I feel like it's very similar when it comes to interacting with people, because, a lot of our history is in our DNA. And so a lot of how we abuse our body are things that we take in over time. It might not be damaging in one use, but over time, it can affect gene expression and whatever else. So I think the same goes for environment. So when you look at the way you interact with people, it's not necessarily like this is what the book says. This is how I was raised. This is how I do it. Therefore, this is how I treat them. It has to be more so like an ebb and flow, like kind of trying something and seeing what works, seeing what doesn't, even with adults, because they have different backgrounds, different upbringing. So it's more so just being aware of that and learning how to communicate appropriately and effectively. So as far as learning that, it doesn't mean that there's a defect or there's something wrong or anything else. It's just because you just have to take a little bit more time to learn. When we got remarried, it wasn't, I don't know, we got married, but you think like get married and this is just how married life is. Like no one ever tells you to prepare for marriage, and this is really how you communicate, and this is what that looks like. It took us the second time.
And that every 10 years you're different people.
Yeah.
I hope almost fully.
Yeah.
If you're growing and intentional, you are definitely different people. But even if you're not, yeah, you're not the same at 45 you were at 25.
That's why a lot of people get divorced when their kids move out, because it's just the two of them. And you're like, who is this?
Yeah.
Because you haven't been paying attention, you haven't noticed. So I don't think it's necessarily that people don't change. I think that people don't notice it because they're too busy going in two separate directions.
The moral of this little story is that my internal saboteur, who I thought was my strength and my superpower, but it wasn't. At the end of it, he's there to serve my ego through safety, security, success. And I absolutely refused. And we've been consistent on those core values. Well, here we are. Mike Rogers.
What's up?
What's up, man?
Doing?
I know you're comfortable enough. So for the sake of people loving on you and rooting for you and finding this hope in their own life, would you say that the last year and the experiences you've had, are they the most challenging? Has it been the most challenging 12 months or the most challenging adversity you've ever gone through?
Divorced in July of this year. Everything started happening July of last year. And so you go through trauma, you get to learn at a base level who I am and what I'm all about. The work that we did together just helped me understand and have that greater awareness to be more present with everybody in my life, myself included.
Yeah. To be present for yourself, right? That's a good point, because the invitation on episode 3, if you want to check that out, it's right there. Let your emotions interrupt you. That was the invitation. I think a lot of us get real freaked out and run from that when it happens. And some of that is because, and this is a pretty good natural segue actually, the beast inside is why we don't spend time thinking about our feelings, tough guys. If he's listening to this podcast in his truck, he's squirming at the idea of letting an emotion interrupt him.
Yeah.
And to think and go, what is this? What does this also feel like? Stuff comes up and it gets in the way. And so, speaking of in line with the saboteur inside, can you describe how you became aware of your beast, that thing that helped you win, the thing that helped you survive?
Yeah, for the longest time, I was corporate dad, working 5 days a week and then bartending and caddying on the weekends to provide as my wife stayed home with the kids. And I thought I was doing all the right things. I was just going through the motions and I was blinded. And so what I had to go through was the process of becoming aware of what I was and who I was. And when we started working together, you allowed me to see a different side of myself as a half committed performer, if I'm remembering correctly, because I always had better than average looks, better than average skill set with school, sports, you name it. And I always got by on that. And in this season of life, that doesn't work.
This is the person who gets to the point where they realize no matter what I do, it's never good enough. And it's double worse when you're naturally bright and you have talent, because that talent can easily get you by with B pluses without opening books. And in other ways, it allows you to rise up a corporate ladder without becoming a good person or a humble heart and helping people, being a good teammate.
I realized that I was over consuming sermons, Bible, podcasts, just listening all the time and not being present in my own life.
And this is before the awakening to it, before seeing your beast.
This is, so going back to Jen would say, you always have AirPods in your ears. Like when I
Okay.
wake up, you got AirPods. When you go to sleep, you got AirPods.
So it was kind of serving as another place to be for you
It was,
mentally.
yeah, it was an escape. And to your
escape.
point about the guy driving a truck or doing whatever, as a man, if you're not sitting with your feelings, you're in trouble. I can tell you that from personal experience.
We're sitting down with Marqueeta Hughes, military veteran, a friend, a former client, and entrepreneur with moving and shaking going on in New York City, making things happen. So we're going to sit here, we're going to talk about her inner saboteur, how she's seen it, how she's confronted it, and how she leads it and gets better in that process on a daily basis. Marqueeta, hi.
Hello.
How did you first see your beast?
To be honest, like I didn't have like the idea of it. I think the first time I saw my beast is like when you and I had the conversation that where you introduced the beast to me, and then I was going to film a YouTube video and I just kind of saw like the voice, like because that idea of the beast, like I was able to kind of like separate it from myself in a way and separate it from my being. So I could see it as a different entity and like it had its own voice and I could hear like the voice. So I know when I was shooting that video, like I remember hearing these voices and I was like, that's the beast. Because the beast is like, oh, you need to do this. And what about this? And you don't need to lose 10 pounds or like, and it was just a very kind of critical voice that I was hearing. And like I said, I was able to separate it like from my own inner voice. I can see like how I've done that in my life, just even in business, where like you hire somebody or you say you're gonna work with somebody and then like I'm like over them, like micromanaging them, just trying to be like in control of everything and not like doing more work than like the actual support. So I said, you know what? I am learning how to release and allow for people to support me and like trust that it's going to be okay. Like it's not the end of the world. I'm not dying.
That's awesome. I think it's fantastic that you saw it. But we know this from the work that we did together. When you were young, you lost control and stability early, way before you could conceptualize what was going on and understand even. And you took on, I'm going to be the supporter. I'm going to be the place of strength, even if it starts with just me and my own little stuff right now. And then that extrapolates over decades. But
And that's what it was.
yep. I bet there was a part of that you realized in yourself that someone, maybe in your mom with the finances or in another way, how am I as the strong pillar going to accept help from weaker people? Weaker just in terms of providing, producing, maybe weaker in their own courage or ability to follow through on things or do something independently. You're a poster child for that. I am woman, hear me roar, but not about femininity necessarily like that for women, but just I am my own person. I got this. Look at what you've done, right? The independence, going across the world, doing work, different people, military. Like you have this incredibly independent and strong background of doing those things. And a lot of that, all of that actually took you away from that family environment circle. It took you away from that atmosphere. We got a comment on YouTube recently, and actually a discovery call that booked for me off of a video. I said, what's your main intention for wanting this alignment blueprint call? What is your main intention? What are you looking for? And the language is this. Everybody says the same thing. Kill the beast or defeat the beast. It's this idea of that it's an enemy or an opponent, right? It's not. It was born.
Exactly.
This is the way Nikki, my wife, puts it. She says, simply put, it is what happens in our response to a trauma.
When I realized like how did I develop this beast? Like then I now realized like, okay, this was like a trauma response. So I reversed it and I said, okay, like this was from trauma. Okay, so this is actually something that's trying to protect me. So now my beast is actually like the little me. And I actually have a picture that I keep out near my work desk of me when I was a kid. I actually keep it there so that I remember that like I can now step in as an adult and like take over, that like the little me can like rest and it doesn't have to like always be on guard, always, do things that
Why
actually
not?
end up like sabotaging.
Why not though?
Why doesn't it have to do it anymore? Because it's like I'm an adult now. And so like I
But the
know
thing that
what.
produced it. Hold on, it's Steven's still too deep. I love this. You're there, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but like this is the most powerful point of all. Of all. This is why people see their beast and go the other way. Most people just go the other way. They don't do what you did.
Yeah.
They go the other way because they get scared.
Yeah.
What they don't realize that you've learned, and you're gonna agree with me, I know it's like the same thing. It's not because you're an adult. Adults get abused and mistreated every day and need
That's true.
protection mechanisms every day. That's not the real reason. The real reason is because it's not happening anymore.
Yeah,
You're not in that situation
that's
anymore.
true. Yeah.
It's over. It's not happening anymore. All right, welcome back.
Hello.
Here we go.
Welcome back.
Let's recap what we went over today. So we talked about the instigator, and I talked about the roots where I thought it was my superpower, ended up being my super saboteur inside. Nikki made an appearance. We talked about some of that, my old patterns, the breaking of yelling. Mike talked about how he first saw his beast was the fact that his wife told him he had AirPods in, and he started realizing that everything he did was to avoid or escape. And by the time he did catch it, it was too late. His household broke in half. But where he's at today, he's flourishing because he's learned some things and he's confronted things. He's looked at his beast in the eyes and realized, yeah, that thing's hurting my efforts, even though I'm afraid to lose it because it helps me win and stay sharp and aware. He didn't buy into the lie. The father of lies is leading if you have dis-ease inside of you anywhere, because that dis-ease will turn into a disease and it will run you and it will ruin you unless you change it. Now, the invitation that we have for you is to simply be open. Be open to the possibility that what you do doesn't come from you, but that now, even though it's not your fault, it's 100% your responsibility, though, to do something about it if you don't like it. And if I were to have you do one thing today that could get you, if this is resonating for you and and you're like, man, I need my breakthrough. I'm there. I know I'm close. Something along those lines. I want you to go to adamkasix.com/blueprint. I want to sit with you for about a half an hour. We can do a phone call. We can do a virtual. We can do whatever you want there. If you're ready, if you have the guts and the courage to take the step. I'm not asking for anything. There's no strings attached. If you like the idea of what we're doing here, you want to talk about working with us and our team, we can have a little conversation and see if it's a fit. We're making a difference one at a time, and we're saving households here. That's what's happening. The value that we're bringing to the world, the light that we're shining through, is the fact that I can promise you, I will help you see your beast if you're willing, open, and courageous enough to take that step with us. So go to adamkasix.com/blueprint and get a time over the next week. That's a wrap for episode 4. We really appreciate you guys being here. If you love it, leave us comments, like, subscribe if you feel like it. We're also on audio if you want to listen over there, but the visuals and the fun is here. And until next time, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Bye.